it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here to do a special review for you today of My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Fredrik Backman, and I think it's Backman and not Backman, but Backman. Hope I'm saying that right, one way or the other. But I just finished this on Sunday afternoon and I wanted to review it for you because I am part of the BookTube tours hosted by Grace at Love and Dem Books. I will link all of the information down in the description box for you. There is also a giveaway where you can win a copy of this book, so make sure to check out the giveaway link in the description as well. So as I said, I received this copy because I was part of BookTube tours, so I did get my copy for free, but that in no way sways my opinion of this story. So let me give you a brief synopsis of what this story is about. Basically, the main protagonist is a 7-year-old girl named Elsa, but Elsa is very different, and she's non-typical 7-year-old, and she is super close with her grandmother, which really in the book she's called Granny. So this 7-year-old Elsa is really close with her granny, and her granny is like her best friend because Elsa's quite different than the other students at her school that are her age, so she doesn't have any friends at school. In fact, she's kind of bullied and chased around a little bit, but her and her grandmother are super close. And if I could really say one word and sum up this book in one word, it would be quirky, because the characters are quirky, the writing is quirky, the story itself is quirky, and this is the quirkiest book I've ever read, and I can't think of another word to describe this book all in one. But Elsa, this quirky 7-year-old, and her quirky grandmother are very different. So Elsa's very advanced for her age. She, her language and vernacular, and she's very interested in reading. She loves Harry Potter. She wears a Gryffindor scarf like myself, and her grandmother sounds like so much fun. I mean, her grandmother throws turds at the police. She makes jalapeno smoothies. I don't know, all the stories about her grandmother here, I'm like, wow, her grandmother is really out there. But I really did love those characters, but they were super quirky, as with all the other characters in this book. The importance of their relationship is that her granny teaches her that it is okay to be different. So one of the main parts of this book is the land of the almost awake. And basically this is a land that Granny has created for Elsa to kind of combat the kind of bullying in school. And it's that, that fantastical, mystical place that they go together and they have adventures. But the land of almost awake, it's a big part of this book, but it has several kingdoms in it, and each one has its own name and its own creatures and its own fairy tales that belong to that particular kingdom, and it just kind of is woven throughout the book. Granny and Elsa also have their own secret language, so they have a language that only they know and they understand. But in the very beginning of the book, it is quite evident that Granny is not doing so well because she is in the hospital, and we find out that Granny has cancer and she dies. Now, of course, this is a total end of the world thing for Elsa. It's her granny, it's her best friend, and how is she supposed to go on life without her? But while Granny is on her deathbed, she gives her knight Elsa one more task, and that task is to take this letter to person X, and and then as she delivers that letter, another letter comes and she has to deliver that letter, and it kind of becomes this chain of events where she's going to deliver this letter. In the process, she finds or gets another letter and she has to deliver it to that. And as you can tell by the title, these are all apology letters to people in Elsa's and Granny's life. And at the same time, you're learning a little bit more backstory about Granny and how she was connected to those characters, and how Elsa is maybe connected to these characters as well. In the process, there is this building. I don't know, I was kind of confused if it was a house or flats or an apartment building, but basically there's several people that live in these flats, and they're all neighbors, obviously, and as Elsa is delivering these letters, she's learning more about her neighbors, and you have to remember that Elsa is very advanced for a normal 7-year-old. It was kind of like hard to believe, but there's always that like enigmatic child that is quite different and that will stand out. So while I didn't really necessarily love some of the aspects of that, like it was believable still to me. So she's getting to know these neighbors of hers, and she's also getting the backstory about her granny's life. So I thought that that was very interesting. Like I said, if I could sum up this book in one word, it would be quirky, because the writing, the characters, and the story itself are all quirky. The first few chapters really felt like short stories to me rather than an overarching story, and it wasn't until a few chapters in, maybe 7 or 8, where I really saw the story taking shape and like, okay, this is all part of one larger story. Each chapter has a little illustration up here, and it has like a title, and the title is either like a word or a phrase, and I noticed that as I was reading the chapters, that word or phrase was kind of like the tie-in of that chapter, and it like actually did mean something, and it was actually that word or that phrase was used in the chapter. So as I was reading, I found myself searching for that, you know, that word or that phrase and like how it all tied together. So there were some moments in this book that were completely hilarious to me, especially stories about the grandmother and the crazy things that she would do, and Elsa's one-liners, because she's so sassy for a 7-year-old, but she's also very smart. Blurbs on the back say that it is touching, sometimes funny, often wise portrait of grief, and it's full of heart, hope, forgiveness, and the embracing of differences. It says Elsa's story is one that sticks with you long after you've turned the last page, and I completely agree with those blurbs. But like I said, Elsa really enjoys reading. She loves Harry Potter. She's always wearing her Gryffindor scarf, and it's always hard for me when pop culture like pops up in books that really aren't like centered around that, and I just think, are they just like, is it like kind of like a name drop? Are they just dropping pop culture references in the story? But this Harry Potter theme and her Gryffindor scarf stay throughout the book, and it really becomes like a part of the story. I would say the highlight of the story to me were definitely the characters that you meet along the way. The story itself, the problem that I had with the book was that it had a lot of the Land of Almost Awake, and then you had what was really happening in the real world, and I kind of would get confused. Is this make-believe? Is this real? Like, what's going on? And I don't want to say it was magical realism, because it was not at all. It was basically just this make-believe fairy tale place that Elsa and her grandmother had created, and stories that her grandmother told her about this make-believe place were really stories that her grandmother had taken from experiences in her real life and made them into fairy tales. So as she's telling Elsa these stories as she's growing up, and then when she's like old enough to understand the stories for what they really are, she kind of understands things a little bit better. I hope that that makes sense to you, because it's really hard to explain. But yeah, I didn't really like that aspect of it. I really liked the main storyline of Elsa being really close to her grandmother, and her grandmother dies, and she has to deliver these letters to different people, kind of like put a puzzle kind of together, get all the letters delivered, and ta-da, here we are at the end, and we have the moral of the story. I didn't like so much about this secret language and the Land of Almost Awake and the cloud animals and the different kingdoms and the animals. I ended up rating this book 3 stars. I did like it. I just didn't love it. I felt like either I missed out on something, or there were definitely parts that I enjoyed more than others. But if it sounds like your type of story, if you really love character-driven stories, I would definitely pick this up. But it definitely does have a plot too. I don't want you to think that. It's just that the characters really stand out in this story more so than the actual storyline or plot itself. But that's my review of My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. That's such a long title. I hope you've enjoyed this review. It sounds like a book that you're interested in. Definitely check out the giveaway down in the description box. But that's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you again in my next video. Bye!